That's awesome. Hello, everybody. Just like your attention for a couple minutes. We're not getting started quite yet, but this is to help get us in the spirit of connecting with others to tell them about the lake. So first, my name's Ken Wood, so I'll be with you here this evening. What you see up here is the Wi-Fi passcode for the American Legion. Why is that important? Because we're going to have a little fun on our cell phones this evening, and there's going to be a prize for whoever does the activity on the cell phone. We're going to randomly select the winner of those that actually try this out with us. So first thing you all got to do is get your cell phones, make sure that you've got your connected to the Wi-Fi, and then in a few minutes we'll tell you how to do the next step. It'll be on Facebook. We're all going to be getting onto Facebook this evening. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everybody. We're going to get some things rolling here. My name is Chris Perucci. I'm the new Lake Association president. Thank you all for coming. To kind of kick things off, I'm going to turn it over to Pat, the Legion commander, for a few comments.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everybody. As Chris said, my name is Pat Silovich. I am the current commander here at the American Legion. Welcome. I welcome. Thank you for choosing our post tonight, and we're doing our absolute best to do a good job for you guys, for all of you. I give you kind of a twofold welcome tonight. Obviously, one as commander, and as many of you know, the Forest Lake American Legion Post 225 has been a business member of the Lake Association for quite a few years in a row now. And the second part of that is that my lovely wife Cindy, who's sitting back there, we moved here in 2008. We live on the south rim of Lake One, diagonally across from here. Condo properties, we are just a couple of properties to the east of that. Have been for quite a few years now. And like you, we'll continue to do so for all the years that we live on the lake and all the years that we are Forest Lake residents. So welcome. We'll do our best to take care of you as I said we would. And I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Pat, and thanks for allowing us to use the facility tonight. And thanks to the staff for everything that they're doing so far. And let's remember to tip our bartenders here at the end of the night. Also for helping us out. So again, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Chris Perucci. I'm the new president of the Forest Lake Association. Kind of drinking through a fire hose for the last 45 days. I became the president on March 1st. To the board, thanks for putting some trust in me. Appreciate that. So I hope I can live up to the expectations going forward. A little bit about myself. Lived in Forest Lake since 1998. Moved on to the lake in 2012. Raised my kids, graduated from Forest Lake High School, both here. They're both gone, have moved on. Empty nester now. Live on the south side of Lake 2 since 2012, and absolutely love everything to do with Forest Lake and the community. So very honored to be part of the Lake Association and to be a resident of Forest Lake. So having said that, my background and really for getting involved in the Lake Association was really understanding issues that impact, I think, our community and the lake overall. The lake is the biggest park that we have. You know, it's our namesake here in town, and I wanted to get involved to understand issues that impact the lake, what we can do as residents, as a lake association to impact and protect this resource for generations to come. And really that's, I think, the goal of the Forest Lake Association. And all of you here want to understand the implications of things that we do from a Lake Association perspective, as well as some of the collaboration with our partners, whether it's a watershed district, you know, the DNR, the city, the Economic Development Authority, and so on. So having said that, look forward to meeting everybody as much as I can. I know a lot of you in the room already, having lived here for as long as I have. Any questions? All my contact information is on the website. Feel free to reach out, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. So before turning it over, I want to say special thanks to Jerry Gruntner, who couldn't be here tonight. Jerry was our former president. He's still serving on the board. I've got some big shoes to fill. He's probably watching on Lakes Area TV. So everybody just, I send to Jerry for all of his service over the years. Jerry's been fantastic. We've got a great program for you tonight. We've got some fantastic speakers. You've probably seen a few of them over the years. We always invite them back. They're very informative. Before jumping into that, I want to introduce our board. So I'll just kind of go along the room. We've got 3 new board members, Lisa Ambley, Keith Cunley, and Mike Schoenfeld. Raise your hands. Everybody can see who you are. Chris Hoyt, Bobby Muskie, Steve Schmaltz, Julie Ullman, Chris Law, Andrea Law. Stand back over here, right? Ken Wood. Special thanks to Ken and Steve in Geneva. They've really gone above and beyond to pull all this together. A lot of work went into that. Andrea and Chris, they run our website and social media. You guys see everything on Facebook, everything that we do. Special thanks to those guys. They do a lot of the heavy lifting for us, and I think it really helped us be successful in the organization that we are. So, again, special thanks to all of you and our sponsors. Without the donations that you make, we don't have a lake association. We don't have the ability to collaborate with our community partners around those issues that impact the lake. So thanks to all of you. Thanks to our lake sponsors. And tonight, special thanks to Forest Lake Floral, Robert's Funeral Home, and of course, the Legion for those complimentary drink tickets. So have a couple, enjoy yourself. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ken. He'll kind of MC us through the program here tonight, and our speakers, and we'll get underway. One point of housekeeping, for sake of time, what we want to do is try to hold off on some of the questions until the end. We do have time at the end.
Good evening, everybody. So fantastic to see this turnout. This is something we've all been working towards, and you know, we're all here for the same reason. We all love this lake, and we want to see great things and continue to enjoy this community. So my name is Kenneth Wood. I'm on the board of the Forest Lake Association, and I'll be your host for this evening. My wife Marlene and I, we live on First Lake. We bought our home in 2014. So we really love living on the lake. We both like to fish. I like to sail. Marlene likes to kayak and go out there and take photos. This is our first lake home. We plan to stay in it as long as we can and keep the lake in great shape at the same time that we're on it. We truly love this community. We love the lake, and we love the surrounding area as well. This is the agenda that we've got for you this evening. So we've got highlights that I'm going to go over. We've got TJ debates here from the DNR to go over the health of the fishery. We'll have a couple of questions if we have time during his session. TJ's going to have to depart a little bit early this evening. We've got aquatic invasive species from our friend Steve McComas. Natural shorelines from the Watershed District, that's Mike and Aiden. Then we also have Sergeant Jedwinski from the lakes, from the Washington County to talk about what's going on the lake from a patrol standpoint. At the end, we're going to have a panel. We'll have people, our speakers come up here on the stage, and we'll do a Q&A at that point. We'll walk around the microphones, so just generally hold off your questions until that time. Okay, so, you know, let's walk through the summary of what was going on with our lake and with the Lake Association. So Jerry, and you know, Jerry, if you're out there, so he started leading as president back in 2017, and that was a real push to try to grow membership of the lake. At that time, we had 288 members and 17 lake sponsors. And the push was, let's grow this. And that's what we've done. So with your help, and that's with the help of the board, with the help of Facebook, with the help of the new website, and you know, yard signs and all that, we've grown the membership now to 550, 40 lake sponsors. Our work is not done though. And that's it's something I just say, it's all on us as a team here to grow this further. We've got 975 residences on the lake with 550 members, so we're about, you're just over the halfway point. Our goal this year is to get up and add 55 more members, or 10%. We've got 618 members in our database, but 550 that pay. So, you know, we're going to try to keep nudging those folks. You know, come on. You get to come to nice events like this and be here with us. There's 32 new homes on the lake, and a lot of those new homeowners are, you know, they get the forms from us when they arrive here, and we encourage them to join as well. Social media. as I was saying, Andrea and Chris have been leading on that. We now have 1,700 followers on Facebook. We're hoping to improve that here still this evening. 1,500 likes. And then we've got an email database of just shy of 700 people that all those emails go out to generally on a monthly basis. Okay, so now here's the fun that I told you about. So now y'all, I feel like this is horrible. I gotta tell you, get out your cell phones. Okay, this is, you're gonna get your cell phone out. Nobody's moving yet. Y'all got them? Or you probably already have them in your hands, is that the thing? So, so this is your go-to, now if you've logged into the website, you logged into Wi-Fi, then you go to your Facebook app. On your Facebook app, there's a little magnifying glass in the upper right corner. Type in there, Forest Lake Association. So it's over there. It says open the app and then type in Forest Lake Association. That's going to then show a little bar and it says community under it. Click on that. That'll take you to our Facebook page. From there, now we need you to like this page. And we need you to follow this page. We're going to try to increase our followers here. And then also, you'll see a post in there for this event this evening. So we also need you to like it and then share it. Now, how many people have ever shared something on Facebook? Let's do a show. Anybody shared anything on Facebook? So this is a new activity, I can tell. So what we're going to do, though, is if you actually make an effort to do this, between now and the end of tonight, we were going to try to do it within the meeting, but the Wi-Fi in here is not as good as to get us all on the Wi-Fi. So you do it between now and tonight. We're going to randomly pick somebody from those that did that followed us and liked it, and we're sending them a $50 gift card to the Lone Oak Grill. So please do that with us. Okay, so next thing is that so we're just talking about some of our accomplishments in 2023. The big thing was that we've executed what's called a tri-party agreement with the city, the Watershed District, and the Forest Lake Association, and we're spending $150,000 on taking care of the water quality and AIS of the lake. And that's a major agreement, and we contribute a portion of that money. Our share is generally not a full third of that. The others are contributing more than us, but it's a tri-party agreement. We also did a joint expansion of the public dock. Does anybody raise your hand if you used the public dock this year? Isn't that thing fantastic? We also have some new upgrades on the buoys. So it's our responsibility. The lake is to purchase the buoys, deploy, and give those buoys to the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department puts them in, takes them out for us, which is great. And then the last thing is we participated in the alum treatment mapping of Second Lake, which then the treatments were done by the Watershed District. So, so let's look at our spending, how we spend our money. Let's give you an idea of how much that we are spending. We spent last year roughly about $45,000, and we expect to spend about that same amount again this year. $12,000 of it went to treatment of Eurasian water milfoil. I'd just say that's the biggest problem on the lake. $3,000 to watercraft inspection. So watercraft inspection is super important because it's the boats from other lakes that are bringing the AIS with them into the lake. And we inspected 7,000 boats. There's $950 on Starry Stonewort search. That's another one that we're worried about. $15,000 on the lakeside dock expansion. $2,000 to operate the vegetation harvester, which the city is running. $3,000 on membership, and $7,400 on operating costs of our lake association. So this is I know this is a topic that gets some people excited, but let me tell you, this is this is a really important thing that we all provide as a service here on the lake. This vegetation or native vegetation harvester, AKA the weed harvester, is operated by the city now. We were operating it before, but now the city's taken it over, and they will go out and they cut the native vegetation in the areas that are permitted by the DNR. And so if you've got a question, you want to say, hey, you haven't cut in front of my place, the city is the people to contact and say that you've got a concern over where the cutting is happening. They did 2023, we did 141 loads of weeds, so that's 1,800 cubic yards was pulled out of the lake. So let's, as far as where we're going with the AIS in Forest Lake, so the way this works is that the Forest Lake Lakes Association, we're responsible for treating the Eurasian water milfoil, but we delineate where these beds are in the lake, and that's work that Steve McComas does, go out and see where these beds are, and then they get color coded, and you'll see some of that in his presentation. If there's heavy growth areas, then the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District, they take care of that. So it's on their budget to do that work. That actually, we can thank the Comfort Lake for getting that in place, because they complained about extremely heavy EWN, said, we need help, we need somebody else to fund this and do the cutting and support it, to treatment, not cutting. We expect to spend 15 to 20,000 on uranium water milfoil, and plus that we see starry stonework still as a big threat here. It's our next main threat we're worried about. And last thing is that the watershed is responsible for the treatment of other AIS. So how does the Forest Lake stack up as far as health goes? Well, it's actually improved. So the last time I was up and presenting was 2 years ago, and at that time we had a B+ to C- rating across the 3 lakes, and now is, you'll also see in Mike's slides, we have an A- to a B- rating, which, so it's the water quality is improving. We do have several species of AIS, but the good news is that we don't have all of them yet, and that's why this boat inspection every year is so important. The problem is you really can't inspect all the boats, so there's still a chance that the AIS could get into our lakes. The fisheries are in excellent shape. You'll get to hear about that from TJ. We had an alum treatment on Second Lake, and that was a major, major grant award, hundreds of thousands of dollars that the Watershed District was awarded to do that, to cut down on phosphorus and trap that phosphorus in the bottom of Second Lake. And then lastly, there's continued pressure on growth, just growth, people moving here and using the lake, and so we have to keep an eye out on that as well. So how can you help? Well, so we have something called the Forest Lake Ambassadors. And so the Lake Ambassadors, so what do? They need to have basic knowledge of the lake. They need to understand our mission and our goals, and then they help us with community events, like some of the ambassadors are here this evening and greeted you as they came in this evening. They encourage members to join, and so it's light. It's a light touch. It's a light activity. Your assistance to our board. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass around a tablet here, and if you'd like to be on your ambassador team, please put your name on here, your email address, and your phone number. So what else can you do is promote the lake by putting those yard signs out in your yards. If you don't have one, there's signs in the back, I believe on both sides. Be observant, reach out to the watershed or ourselves if you see something that doesn't look right. Read your emails. If you're not a member, please join. We're hoping there's a bunch of people that came this evening that weren't members yet. I hope you'll see how sincere this group is and why it's so important to the health of the lake. And if not a member, join and let's City of Forest Lake know how important our lake is. Here's our lake sponsors. One more thing, Hallberg Foundation, one of our lake sponsors donated $2,500 just recently. Let's give them a round of applause. And then to wrap up, Forest Lake remains to be one of the its premier lake in the metro area. Please pay your dues. Please help us meet our goals. Put out your yard signs. And tonight, if you buy a flag, if you need a flag for your boat, we're also giving away a free Forest Lake t-shirt to go with that while the supplies last. Thank you, everybody. Okay, our next speaker this evening is going to be TJ Debates from Department of Natural Resources. TJ, come on up.
Well, thanks, Ken. Appreciate the invite to come speak to you all tonight. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 Lake Association meetings ago. The lights went out in Texas. I don't know if you all remember that. That was quite an interesting night, so hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm going to make this quick. I've had just a lot of evening meetings, so I'm going to try to get through this and have some time for questions. So I'm not going to be here towards the end, so you can always reach out to me. My email address is at the end of the presentation. You can get it from Ken if you have any fisheries-related questions after the fact. So thanks for having me, and I'll get right to it. So a lot of folks think that, in fisheries, we just, we're the state, we do whatever we want. It's not true. Every lake we manage all of our lakes, rivers, and streams with the state of Minnesota on individual lake management or river management or stream management plans. And we do the same on forests. Forest is one of our best overall fisheries. Looks like your water quality is doing really well, had good grades, and the fishery is in the same place. So it seems like you're really moving in a good direction, or we all are. And so this is what we base our management off of, and this is why we do our lake surveys, to basically evaluate the effectiveness of our management. And in this case, it's mostly stocking walleyes and muskies. Sorry, I like moving around. I don't like sitting behind a podium or standing behind a podium, so work with me here. So, like I said, the main thing in walleye and muskie stocking, we've been stocking walleyes annually, and you can see here we've been kind of rotating a rate where one of our fisheries researchers found that, everybody thinks you stock more fish in a lake, you stock more pounds of walleyes, you're going to have a better overall fishery. It's not the case. He found kind of that sweet spot was like this 0.65 pounds per littoral acre is kind of that sweet spot. And so what we did is we rotated that between 0.65 and 1 pound per littoral acre, and we started in 2017, and we did it through 2022. And last year, I think, what do we got there? Yeah, we stocked, we did about 1,000 pounds. So we did the 0.065 pounds. And you'll see when I show you our walleye numbers. So our stocking seems to be working. And that's why we do our surveys. A lot of folks, we do surveys so people can go on Lake Finder and see what's in the lake. But the main reason we do our surveys is to evaluate our work. Anglers are basically paying for us to do, work for, for the anglers, for all these lakes, rivers, and streams. And so we need to do a good job with that and be efficient. So I'll talk a little bit about the walleye population. It's as good as it's ever been right now, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we're talking about trying something new, and this is before, we actually went out and gill netted a lake, last summer and saw that the walleye population's in really good shape. But there's a strain of walleye. Our researchers and one of our geneticists found that there's a strain of walleyes that's more or less, walleyes, it's all one species, one genus, one species, but there's a strain in southern Minnesota that does really well in our lakes, rivers, and streams in southern Minnesota. And in the past, we've stocked fry or fingerlings from different, more or less genetic strains. And we think we can actually create a better fishery potentially by stocking this strain that's more or less evolved in southern Minnesota. And so we're going to be trying stocking walleye fry, and it kind of goes against what we do a lot in the metro, because most of our lakes have a lot of crappies and bluegills and a lot of small mouths. So when we stock those fry, they're like the size of a mosquito. There's a lot of mouths out there to eat the fry. And so we've always stocked fingerlings because we want to create a fishery for the anglers and for the folks utilizing the lakes. But we think we've seen a lot of research out there and a lot of data on a lot of these lakes where they switched over to this fry, and they're actually seeing higher catches of walleyes in their gill nets because this strain is more or less, it's used to these conditions. And so we're going to try that. I know it seems kind of, why would you change it when you're going to see our walleye numbers here in a little bit? We're going to try to change it, but we're going to have almost like a contingency plan. So like if the fry, the lower Mississippi strain fry stocking that we're going to try, if it doesn't work, and I'll talk about that, we're going to stock it with fingerlings after the fact. So don't worry. We're still going to continue our normal management, but we're going to see if this fry, this lower Mississippi strain would work. Because if it does, then we don't need to raise all those fingerlings in our ponds. We don't need to travel to Fergus Falls or Ortonville, Minnesota to, put miles on our trucks and bring all those walleyes back to stock in Forest Lake. Or even most of the time, we buy them from private walleye facilities out in west central Minnesota. So the fry can be more efficient. It can provide a better fishery, and so we're going to try it, but we're going to have a contingency. So we're going to. Let's see. I skipped it. Sorry. There we go. So it's talking about the walleye catches here. You can see right here, the walleyes, the dark bar. We went up to almost 10 walleyes per gill net in our survey last year, and you can kind of see, it's kind of fluctuated in that 3 to kind of 6 range, since 1998, and it took a really good jump here last year. And so that's where I'm saying, like, why would you change anything? Why would you do that? But what we're going to do is we're going to go out, we're going to stock the fry this spring, and then in the fall, we're going to go out and so you may see our electrofishing boat cruising the shores this fall. It's not a spaceship. It's not an alien coming down. You don't need to call in, to the sheriff department and say, I think we have an alien on our lake. That'll be us. But we're going to go out and see if those fry that we're stocking are actually, growing and actually recruiting to the fishery. And kind of we're seeing that, 3 to 4 inch range. So they're basically taking the place of the fingerlings. So if we see that and they're in good numbers, then we don't need to stock fingerlings. You're still going to have that good fishery. And the other part too is the strains are different. So the walleyes that we normally stock we get them, there's a Mississippi strain, there's a Pike River strain, which is up by Tower. We can actually do fin clips or take scales from fish and we can send them in and they can actually do the genetics on it, our geneticist, and we can know if that strain is either this lower Mississippi strain fry that we're stocking or it's a fingerling strain that we're stocking. So we have a lot of options. We're not going to, no major changes, but we want to try something new because I think the lake, it's a really quality fishery and we think we can do better. And that's our job to do that. So, but overall, you can see the perch numbers are down, which is pretty normal. They're pretty high. And then we have a strong surge in a walleye population. They're eating the perch. So you're going to have that drop in the perch population. But overall, fish populations fluctuate, but the good thing is the walleyes are definitely, on the upswing. So kind of adding to, I'm sure Mike's going to talk a little bit about the water quality and the grades you're having. So this is just another little cherry on top of the cupcake. So future sampling, we're going to be doing surveys in 2025, and we do them every 2 years. This is one of our main priorities in our area. It's a large lake. It provides a lot of different angling opportunities, and we're going to continue to survey it every 2 years. We'll be doing an IBI survey, 2027, 2028. We get that from the Pollution Control Agency. They usually schedule their watershed calendar or their watershed sampling usually every 10 years. So it's going to be one of those 2 years. So, and then the other part too that I've talked to Ken a little bit about is the opportunity for adding a fishing pier on Forest Lake. We have a lot of money out there right now. We actually had the legislature basically appropriated a lot of money. It's called Get Out More money. And a lot of it's for, enhancing our boat accesses, getting fishing piers in, making our lakes and rivers and streams more accessible to the public. And so there's an opportunity there. I know we're going to be doing one for sure on Clear Lake, your neighbor. And there's no reason we can't work, potentially with you guys and with the city and with our colleagues in Parks and Trails and maybe get a fishing pier on Forest Lake as well. So, and it's awesome that you guys want to do that because a lot of times I see You know, you go to talk to Lake Association folks, and they're like, we don't want more people on our lake. This is our lake. You guys don't think that way. It's a resource. There's 3 public accesses. It's for everybody to enjoy, and that's how we look at it. And so it's kind of cool that you're kind of in that same mindset. So thank you. And that's kind of all I had. Any questions on the fishery? This isn't from Forest Lake. This is a big old channel catfish our son caught a few years ago. It's pretty impressive, right? I mean, he's yeah. I think he was like 6 or 7, so the fish looks just a lot bigger based on his size. But you gotta have that, you know, that fish picture in every presentation.
Yeah, it looks like we got time, TJ, for some questions, so I'll wander around, and if anybody's got questions, just raise your hand, and I'll come over to you with the microphone.
Short and sweet. A lot of good things going, though, and we're going to continue to do the work we normally do and maybe try a few things, but I think you guys are definitely on a good trajectory.
Anybody over here? Great. How big are the walleyes that are come into those nets? What's the average size that you're seeing?
I think the good thing is we had a lot of different year classes and sizes, a good, you know, size and age distribution, which we like to see because that shows that, you know, the work we're doing, it's not like dominated by a bunch of big fish. We're seeing, you know, various sizes and various ages, so a pretty healthy fish population, or walleye population. I'd have to look. We just did the survey, and actually the survey will be available before the fishing opener. We're still buttoning up our reports because we do the surveys in basically 2023, summer of 2023, and then in the winter we write the reports. So they're not officially done and on Lake Finder until spring of 2024, which is just about now. So we're coming up. Yes.
What's going on with the muskie population?
Muskie population, it's in good shape. You know, we did a population estimate. I think we're scheduled to do one in 26, 27. Let's see here. Yep. So number 4, mark and recapture assessment for muskie in an 8-year rotation. Next assessment, 26, 27. We're going to try to do that. One thing we've kind of switched in the spring we have some really good muskie lakes in our area, and we're doing a lot of muskie population estimates, but the thing of it is it takes a lot of time and a lot of staff to do those, and we've collected some pretty good data. We're going to start switching towards looking at our crappie and sunfish populations because they're the most popular. They're the ones that are, you know, we get a lot of harvest, you know, winter angling, ice fishing. You know, sunfish, we have some reduced bags on some of our sunfish lakes in the metro, so it's not that they're not important, but we've really focused our spring efforts on muskies the last 10 years, and so we're maybe going to switch gears and maybe do some more panfish. But I can get that information to you. I just don't have it on me. If you know, my email's at the end, shoot me an email or whatever, I can stop and give you my telephone number, and we can chat about it. I'll have the data for you tomorrow. I just don't have it with me. Good question. Yep.
Hey, I got the mic here. Hey.
All right.
Man with
He's got the mic.
Hey, TJ, you piqued my interest when you mentioned about the monies available to improve the boat access and
Yep.
lifts and such like that.
Yep.
But, you know, probably end of July through the year, our lake levels were so low, we couldn't even access a lot of those. So is that any of that money available to address maybe the dam that flows out of Forest Lake to make it somehow adjustable so we can work on that somehow? I mean, you can build all the parking lots to come to a store, but if there's no freeways or roads to come into them, it's all useless.
It's a good question. Generally, lake levels, I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And generally, it's our hydrologists that, you know, every lake level has kind of a set mark. Not to say that we couldn't do it. You know, that would probably be working with Mike and the Lake Association where you could put maybe some kind of variable crest. We do it on a lot of lakes out west where you want to manage lake levels for like waterfowl. You know, you see a lot of the lakes out there, you get fathead minnows and bullheads in these really clear vegetated lakes that are supposed to be good for waterfowl, and they get turbid, and then you don't have the vegetation, you don't have the inverts, and you don't have duck populations. And so they put those on a lot of those lakes so you can actually draw the water down, force it to winter kill, and then let it come back up again. This is a little different, you know, this is a large lake and a lot of people live on the lake. It's a good question. I can't address that, but I could talk to our hydrologist to see if that would be something and maybe work with Mike. I mean, no promises, but.
That'd be great.
Yep.
Not to mention all the falls that are out there. You just couldn't even access the right once you receive water.
Yep, and it's just been so dry. I mean, we're seeing on a lot of our lakes, our rivers, our streams. You know, I just talked to one of our hatchery managers that it's raising brook trout for us down in southeastern Minnesota, and I have a quota for all these brook trout to be coming this spring. We don't have the water to stock them. You know, I'm like, yeah, we may have to cut back on that. There's plenty of opportunities down in southeastern Minnesota where they could stock some streams, but we just don't have the water right now, and so. I can't control Mother Nature.
All right, great.
So,
Great answer
but
to a tough question.
It is a tough question, but you know, I'll look into it and I'll check with our hydrologist and see if there's an opportunity there.
So I'd just like to, if you'd all give TJ a great round of applause. Okay, our next speaker is Steve McComas from Blue Water Sciences. Yeah.
Okay, well, hey, good evening, everybody, and nice turnout. Thanks for coming. I was going to talk about some aquatic invasive species, and while these are being set up, kind of go over the realm of invasive species in Forest Lake. So I'll just get going right here. I think I just hit a little clicker. Oh, nice. Thanks. That one?
There we go.
I guess the good news is that we have several species but we do have a lot of native plants, so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Haha, going that way. Well, we'll start out with curlyleaf pondweed. Curlyleaf pondweed is growing right now in Forest Lake, and it's the first invasive species that comes up. You can see over the years we've been tracking it and acres that were treated. We've gone from a low of about 17 acres right here to a high of about 169 acres at one time. I just finished the curlyleaf pondweed survey for 2024. Because of the poor winter, short ice season and everything else, we were figuring we were going to have a bumper crop. So we went out there and we took points after points. We took 400 or 500 points around all three lakes, first, second, and third. And what we found is that we only had 16 acres of curlyleaf that really needs to be treated in 2024. Why is that? And I'm not sure I have the exact answer, but it looks like what we're finding is because the native plant community in Forest Lake has been so robust the last couple of years, and because of the short winter ice season, the native plants died down, but they didn't decompose while we had these conditions. So they basically hindered or inhibited curlyleaf growth. And so in this case, the native plant community may well have reduced the curlyleaf pondweed community as well. I guess we'll find out because we still have a lot of growing season left. We still have May and June, so keep our fingers crossed. But we are finding curlyleaf growing up in other lakes right now, 1 to 2 feet tall. So there might be something to these native plant hindering curlyleaf pondweed. So that's what we had over the years in terms of acres treated. The next slide here, so what we've done is over the last 10 years or so is put all our treatment areas on this map. And you can see there's the pattern is that it can grow just about any place in Forest Lake. And so what these polygons are here, these represent areas that have been treated one time or another. And basically it does vary from year to year. I mean, we can go from 169 acres one year of heavy growth to about 15 or 16 acres another year. So it's variable, and we don't really want to treat just willy-nilly. So we'll only treat what we think would be the heavy growth. Well, milfoil came in a few years ago, and we were wondering, what's that going to do in the lake? Well, the Lake Association has been very aggressive to treat Eurasian water milfoil and really has contained it primarily in First Lake. That's been quite an effort and quite a success from that standpoint, because in White Bear Lake and Bald Eagle, it didn't take long for that Eurasian milfoil to get around the whole lake. So good work for the Lake Association to be on top of that. In fact, in 2023, we didn't find hardly any milfoil at all. But it doesn't always disappear, and then by August, sure enough, it did show up, but look, only in a few spots, and primarily in First Lake. And so we treated a few acres in 2023, and we'll have to wait to see what happens in 2024. When we were doing the curlyleaf pondweed survey, we did find just a couple spots of Eurasian water milfoil, but it's still early in the year yet. A lot of growing season to go. Over the years since 2015, you can see that it's been primarily, these are the we call this a hotspot map. All the areas that have been treated since 2015 are plastered on this map. And you can see that for the most part it's primarily First Lake, with a little bit dipping into Second Lake, but nothing in Third Lake. Now I think, to be realistic, we'll probably end up with milfoil in Third Lake, but let's try to keep it out of there as long as we can. So nice aggressive work to hit that milfoil and try to keep it under control. And so far it's been working. Well, another invasive species has been flowering rush. And I think we're pretty familiar with that. Now, a couple of things that were happening with that flowering rush is, one, we have a very unique strain of flowering rush. It's a fertile flowering rush, which means that seeds are viable. All other strains, just about 90% of the other strains in Minnesota, it's a triploid or haploid, the seeds are not viable. So even though it puts out a flower in some of these other strains, they don't produce any new plants. But the seeds for the flowering rush in Forest Lake are viable. So it's quite a challenge to try to keep that flowering rush from spreading. Now what happened is, and here's 2023. You can see there's a lot of dots, but they're green dots. And what that means for the most part is that these green dots, it's a small little patch. I mean, less than 100 square feet, or sometimes even 10 square feet. We've been tracking all the little patches around the lakes, and what we're finding is that the acres of flowering rush have kind of decreased, but the number of spots or little patches has been kind of increasing. We have up to 400 sites of flowering rush that we've marked, but at any given time, there's usually probably not more than 50 to 100 of those sites that are actually growing. What happens is that sometimes it sits there and it's dormant for a year or two, then the next year it'll put up a stalk and grow. So we've treated, we'll go out several times this summer because this continually grows and sprouts as the summer goes on. If we just did it one time, the flowering rush would probably come back and start taking over, and especially if we don't control those seed heads. So we treat 3 or 4 times a year, and generally only about less than 10 acres per treatment, but a lot of little patches. And one thing we're finding too is that the flowering rush, there's another plant out here, because of the low lake levels, it's called Sagittaria, which is a native plant, but similar looking to flowering rush. That's a native plant that usually does not take over. And I think when lake levels come up another foot or so, that Sagittaria, which never really used to be much of a factor, will also go away. So right now we have to figure out where the Sagittaria is, the bulrush, those are native plants, and then the flowering rush. So we're hitting those as well. You can see that although these dots here on the map are not to scale. And we just have little itty bitty patches. If we see even 5 or 6 stems, we'll mark it. So a lot of sites, but not very much acreage. In fact, when we first started in 2014, there was, we were treating 7, 8, 15 acres. And since that time, we have now treated, we're down to, at the end of the year, a very low, less than an acre overall of flowering rush. So we have to keep on top of it, and it's going to be an ongoing challenge. Zebra mussels came in about 2015 as well. And we first found them at one site, but when we did additional surveys, first of all, I guess the question was, could we eradicate zebra mussels in Forest Lake? And we know from experience that that's a challenge too. However, if you find zebra mussels at more than 1 or 2 sites, or more than 2 or 3 sites, they're widespread, and the odds of eradication are very, very low. So we went out where we first found them. I think somebody brought a sample into the Watershed District Office, a Lake Association member, and based on that, we went out and checked the lake. Well, we found zebra mussels at several locations, and then from that, knew that eradication is not a factor. We're now going to be into a kind of a management and observation mode. So here's 2015, all the known zebra mussels. Here's a map coming up of 2023. We did an extensive plant survey. So every plant sample that we took, we looked to see if there's zebra mussels on it, and we noted that, and from that, then we could get a distribution of zebra mussels. So in 2023, you can see that they are fairly well distributed in first, second, and third lake. That's pretty typical. What will happen eventually, we're down now into year 8 or so of zebra mussels, and in the next year or two, I would predict that the zebra mussel distribution or abundance will start kind of dying back. If you notice how clear the water is, some of that is filtering of zebra mussels. They take out so much algae that they start starving. And when you see a zebra mussel shell that's open or gaped, that indicates that it probably died, and usually from a lack of food and algae. So we'll see what happens. Every time we'll do a survey like this, we'll be tracking the zebra mussel distribution and kind of follow it as the years go on. And the thing is, we don't have a lot of, well, we do have a fair amount of rock and rubble in Forest Lake, but we also have a lot of aquatic plants. Zebra mussels will also attach to aquatic plants. And that is kind of, it's not an optimal substrate for attachment, but they'll use them. And as we can see here, that's what's shown in that picture. And that's where we find most of the zebra mussels right now in Forest Lake are attached to plants. And that's why it's important too for boat inspections or for boats leaving the lake and trailering, that these zebra mussels could be on almost any aquatic plant. So it's important to get the plants off the trailer. Well, one of the things that happens with zebra mussels, you know, they're filterers. They take out all the single-celled algae. We can filter that, and that'll clear up the water. They're so efficient, they can filter out enough water to really reduce the algae population or density in a lake. And what happens, the water clears up, native plants will then, or all plants will kind of respond to that. So we started looking at native plant occurrence and distribution starting in 2013 and 2018, and then in 2023. And you probably have observed that those aquatic plants are kind of increasing. Now, some of that's low lake levels as well, but with this and these native plants, the reds here are heavy growth, the yellows are moderate growth, and the greens are light growth. We're seeing a fair amount of heavier growth in the last year or two. And again, Mother Nature kind of keeps things, there's checks and balances out there. I would not expect the zebra mussels that are clearing up the lake to sustain that clear water in the long term, and therefore the aquatic plant abundances, once the lake levels come back up too, all those will factor in. We'll get to a more normal aquatic plant community. So here's, you know, it's actually kind of pretty. If you're out there and you're snorkeling and things, the underwater field and the underwater garden is actually kind of pretty. These are mostly native plants. It's pretty thick, but again, Mother Nature, there will be ups and downs, and there will be not really crashes, but it'll probably return to an equilibrium that is not going to be quite this heavy with aquatic plant growth. So the changes that occur in Forest Lake over the last few years include things like the clarity is increasing because the algae is going down, clear water, aquatic plants will shoot up a little bit. They'll grow deeper. That'll help keep the water clear, kind of sustain the clear water gains we've gotten. If we can get some water back on the lake, that'll help, because sunlight is greatly muted with water. And the shallower the water, the better the light penetration with clear water conditions. Fish, if you're looking for fishing opportunities or trying to find fish, they're going to move around. I don't think that the fish community is losing, pounds per acre, but they might be changing a little bit in their composition, and they might also be moving to different habitats. So we have to be clever enough, when I say we, probably you all, have to be clever enough just to find the fish, because they're still out there. Pounds of fish per acre probably not changing too much. So just to kind of conclude, Forest Lake has all these unique natural features, and TJ was kind of referring to it as well. Every lake is different. Every lake has its own fingerprint, and no two lakes are exactly alike. In fact, not even every basin is exactly alike. You go first, second, and third lake. So they have those unique characteristics. And I do believe, we kind of are seeing it, the aquatic invasive species, a healthy lake, recreational activities and opportunities, those can coexist with a little bit of work, and although there is some challenges. And that is one of the challenges, is to keep maintaining and managing the nuisance vegetation as best we can in the most cost-effective and an ecologically beneficial approach. So with that, we'll go for questions later. Okay, sounds good.
Okay, our next speakers are Mike Kinney and Aidan Reed from the Forest Lake Watershed District.
Okay, thank you, Ken, and all the Lake Association for inviting us to this annual event. So I think this is my 11th year presenting now. So try to give you a little update. So this is one is just for people that maybe don't know us as well. So we're a special unit of government. I always say, think of us like a school district, but our boundary is it's a political boundary, but based on the geographic area of where the water flows. And so Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District is one of roughly 50 watershed districts around Minnesota. Of course, every place is a watershed, and not necessarily all of them have watershed districts in terms of helping to manage the land and the lakeries and wetland things. So, one of the things, so this picture here shows that we have a lot of lakes, but also we have a lot of wetlands. So when we look at St. Croix County, of all the partners there, so we have the largest percentage of land area that is wet, so to speak, between open water and wetlands at roughly almost 1/3 of the whole land area. So, all right. So we have just some of the things that we do in terms of water quality projects, monitoring, permitting, and also education and outreach. So one of the big things we've been working on has been trying to reduce the phosphorus content into lakes. 1 pound of phosphorus contributes to about 500 pounds of algae. So we've been using a very unique approach through diagnostic monitoring. And so we have early projections of this about 20 years ago for improving a lake to the state standard was anywhere from about 40 to 75 years or more. So, but we have across the major water bodies in the lake, 5 of them, we've improved reduced the phosphorus concentration by the excess amount by 94%. And so we're seeing a lot of improved water quality across the lake, or all the lakes. However, there's other things as well. We want to talk about. Still, there's nitrogen and sediment and other things that can enter into any water body. So last year, because of the because of the weather in part, and the other projects and some of the things that Steve McComas was talking about, so the water quality is definitely improved. We'll see where this season comes along, but you remember 2014 to 2020, we had some of the wettest years on record, in fact. I think 2 of those years were all-time records for this. Over the last 20 years, we're seeing from the previous roughly 150 years, well, the data set from very early from the 1830s up until the 1960s, adding in from the 1960 to present, we've increased the precipitation rate by about 25%. So we're definitely seeing wetter seasons on average in this part of the country. So while we've made a lot of improvements through this, and I know there was discussion about the alum treatment already that was done last summer, or late in the season rather, on Second Lake. So it's a split application. We will evaluate the treatment through 2024 and look to do a potential another application in 2025 for longevity and treatment purposes. So for Forest Lake, we've made this major reduction in phosphorus, but one of the last things that we're looking at doing, we've done a number of different projects. One of the things we've also done is work with the city of Forest Lake. You see the street sweeper going around. That actually reduces roughly 20% of all the phosphorus going into Forest Lake. So it's a major benefit. It's also a big savings to the city, because then it's removing all the material before it gets into the stormwater ponds and things like that they have to maintain. So it's one of the most cost-effective things that we've been able to do for Forest Lake. So, but you'll see here the last part we're showing here in terms of the analytics is that the buffer shoreline piece is really the last key for the long-term health of Forest Lake and just overall ecosystem services to the lake. So, all right, now Aiden's going to take over.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. So Mike gave us kind of the great overview of the watershed scale approach. Now we're going to button down a little bit and talk about shorelines. So for those of you with a good eye on the previous slide, you saw the last little section of that speed dial, that's shoreline buffers. So we've made pretty good progress on addressing those phosphorus goals. Now we've got that little bit left, and it's not big projects, it's not street sweepers, it's shoreline projects that are done on private property owned by you folks. So this is kind of us coming to you and asking for help to kind of restore the lake to where we need it to be and ensure our long-term goals can be met. And so this is kind of what I think of when I think of an approachable, realistic shoreline for residents of Forest Lake. So what we're looking for when we talk about lakescaping is this idea of managing a property in a way that you're able to get your use out of the property, you have access to a dock, you've got probably a nice viewpoint coming down from your property, from your house. But then also we have things like this buffer. You're diverting overland flow that would otherwise be ending up in the lake. You're providing habitat to pollinators and birds. And then potentially down at the actual lakefront, you might even be providing some habitat for turtles and for spawning fish. So that's kind of that idea of how can you manage your property in a way that you're getting your use out of it, but then thinking about the other creatures that might be utilizing it, as well as your neighbors who are potentially benefiting from that improved water quality. Loons, other critters that are going to be using that shoreline. Is that? So this is just about my favorite shoreline on Forest Lake. So round of applause. So we recently completed a shoreline habitat survey last year that we took a look at the quality of the vegetation around the lake, and those are what we're talking about when we're talking about natural shorelines. So when we're talking about natural shorelines, some folks, are certainly going to be a little uncomfortable with things that they might see here. But what we're talking about is value. So a more natural shoreline, you're going to have lower long-term maintenance costs. And we're not talking in a year or 2 years. We're talking about the life of a shoreline, which is probably going to be as long as you're owning it. Anybody with riprap, it lasts quite a while, but when it fails, that's expensive. Retaining walls, rock walls, things like that are going to have a longer-term maintenance cost, and at some point you will encounter these costly repairs. Maintain or improve property values. You paid for that shoreline. When that's eroding into the lake, you're losing it. Your assessment likely isn't changing based on how much square footage is washing into the lake. But a buffer, this woody vegetation, those are the types of things that are going to help protect that property value. And then also thinking about the legacy that you're leaving. So, a lot of these properties on Forest Lake are generational properties. So as these properties are getting passed on to the next generation, what's left? What's that going to look like? And then even more so on the property value side of things, those of you in front will be able to see on the bottom here, we have pretty consistent studies showing a correlation between the clarity of water and the property value increases. And that's pretty basic. A cleaner lake, a healthier lake, a lake that people are more interested in recreating on or enjoying, that's going to increase property values over time. And so this is kind of a comparison. We like to hype up Forest Lake. Our water quality is doing pretty well. The fisheries are doing well. Our shoreline habitat, we're not doing very well. This is kind of a regional comparison. And of the 824 lakes that were surveyed by the DNR, we place at 817th. So that's not a great score to have. And we're very interested in improving that as soon as possible. We're not competitive, but this is a good spot to start getting competitive. And so this is kind of the map that we use to draw that data. So the shoreline score shows the health of that habitat at each point. What that is that's lakeshore trees, lakeshore shrubs, how much natural cover might be on that lakeshore spot. And so one that we're particularly interested in is lakeshore trees and shrubs. The quip is, of course, Forest Lake got its name from somewhere. Well, at this point, Forest Lake has largely been deforested. So more than half the points we looked at had 0 trees or shrubs on their lakeshore. Now, folks love trees. It's a great way to add property value. It's a great way to hold that shoreline intact. That's something that's very easily addressed. And we're looking forward to making some progress on that. And this is our goal as the Watershed District. Just to reframe things, we're looking to seek 75% of lakeshore parcels with 75% natural cover. And that's what this looks like. So this is a fantastic example from Comfort Lake. This is 75 to 100% natural shoreline cover. Now you can't see in this picture, but they do have access for a dock. They've got a little gap in their buffer. I love the cascade of different heights. It's aesthetic, but also this is providing tremendous habitat value, and that shoreline is not eroding. There is likely 0 erosion occurring on that shoreline, and it's also, a protection against ice heaving as well. It's just a great example. Now, this is pretty typical. We still, this is a very common property on a lot of our developed lakes. This is a 0% natural shoreline situation.
Not Forest Lake.
And I'll note this is not Forest Lake, but this is a very typical property. And so, and so that's one thing that we try to address. If you could go back just a second, Mike. So this has high aesthetic value. And so reframing that thought, what is it about this that we like? And so how can we, is it the access? Is it the beach? Is it the dock? Is it the viewpoint? We want to make sure that we can preserve those things that give value to you as a lakeshore homeowner, while also incorporating things like lakescaping that are going to provide value to your neighbors, to the creatures that reside in the lake, to your long-term property values. It's about finding that balance. We don't need everybody to have a 30-foot buffer on their shorelines that extends all the way back to the house, but we do need some sort of spectrum on there. So we mentioned lakescaping. This is a great example of a do-it-yourself project. Able to do, just yourself in a weekend, I suppose. This gives you kind of the more accurate, look at how long that takes. So again, a pretty typical shoreline. Immediately after, you can see they invested in some actual potted plants rather than just seed. And then after a few months, you start seeing that more rapid return. So it'll take, 2 to 3 years before it becomes kind of self-sustaining and you get that full growth. And then this is another good example. You've got the retaining wall. The retaining wall, there are no loons, there's no turtles, there's no fish utilizing that retaining wall. Well, if you add a little bit of buffer space there, you're now extending the lifespan of that retaining wall, which is probably expensive, and you're also offering some additional services for the critters of the lake, improving water quality. Again, this is what we kind of see as a more achievable thing for many lakeshore residents. You've still got that full use of the lake. Well, now you've added those buffers that add some aesthetic value, but also you're improving the water quality of the lake. And we have cost share assistance available. So if you have no idea where to start with us. So we're willing to work with you at pretty much any stage of this process. Whether it's you have nowhere to start, you need help picking out plants, contractors, those are services we're able to offer. And then we have cost share programs as well. So mini grants, very accessible for folks who are looking to do a project themselves. And then we have larger community water cost share programs as well for folks looking for a larger investment. Then lastly, I want to mention we have our property tax payment program. If you already have a property that you feel is meeting kind of these water quality goals, some of the things I've described, we do offer annual payments to kind of help you either manage that property or basically to say thank you for helping the lake.
Ecosystem services.
Yep, providing ecosystem services. Again, just a few more technical assistance items we offer. Free soil testing for residential landowners, and happy to be in touch and discuss more. Oh, last plug, we are having a natural shoreline information meeting, not next Monday, but the Monday after, April 29th. We'll be sending out some mailers for those too, so we can kind of continue this conversation. All right, well, thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Sergeant Jadwinski. He is with the Washington County Sheriff's Department, and he's going to talk to us about their experience out there patrolling on Forest Lake. Sergeant Jadwinski.
Well, thank you for having me. Like you said, I'm Sergeant Kevin Jadwinski with the Washington County Sheriff's Office. A little bit about me. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for about 10 years. I'm a past canine handler, a SWAT team lead, operator. Can you hear me? Is that better? All right, sorry. Don't know where to put this thing. So, I've been an FTO instructor. I teach emergency vehicle operations, and I got promoted, took the test, got promoted, and currently I run our Water Parks and Trails unit. So our Water Parks and Trails unit, I know you're all here for Forest Lake, but just a brief overview of kind of what we do. The Sheriff's Office is responsible for all the bodies of water in Washington County, which is 408 bodies of water and 62 miles of river. So we try to cover that the best that we can. Forest Lake is probably our #2 most patrolled area after the St. Croix. That's our longest stretch of river and our most popular. So we hit that as hard as we can. We have 2 boats stationed out there, and then we give a lot of time to Forest Lake. I'm sure all of you have seen our boats out there. We're currently in the process of swapping over our boats to more of like a fishing style. If you see, our old boats were mostly just a big hunk of aluminum, right? Now they're kind of switching over to a more friendly, user-friendly Lumicrafts. We have Trophy 185s and Trophy 205s. They're just a lot more maneuverable and just make more sense for what we do and patrol-wise. So we have a boat stationed at Tim's 24/7 for the boating season, usually around Memorial going through end of September, somewhere in there. Just all depends on the weather and what we have going. But with the water that we cover, we do all of the snowmobile trails, we do OHV, anything to deal with side-by-sides, four-wheelers. In my unit, I run all of our community engagement, our mounted patrol, our reserves, and then I'm the commander of our water recovery team. So I do a lot with boats, a lot with water. I love it. It's a fun change of pace from patrol. So Forest Lake, like I said, we spend a lot of time out there. We are usually randomly out there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. Usually always have somebody out Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. Saturdays and Sundays, we try to be out there from 9 in the morning till usually dark if we can help it with staffing. So besides myself, I have 5 full-timers, and then we have 4 seasonals that come back and work every summer for us. So between people times off and all of that stuff, we try to get out there a lot. For the most part, it's education. A lot of the times, a lot of boaters don't know all of the rules. We try to educate them the best that we can. On Forest Lake, I'd say we see the most is registration. People either forget or don't have numbers, stuff like that on their boat, and then jet ski issues. So, and that's across every body of water in the entire county. So a lot of that just comes with young operators and educating them, right? We see a lot of people, I mean, you can't jump a wake. You can't jump each other's wake. So a lot of the times that we get that, you can go over somebody's wake, but you have to be 150 feet behind them. Jet skiers, a lot of people don't know that. So they're making a wake and their buddies are jumping right behind them. So we see a lot of that. We stop a lot of that. And a lot of it is just, like I said, is education. You know, everybody's been very respectful. You know, when we stop them, a lot of times they just don't know. So a lot of times it's on the parents, right? Maybe you've told them, you don't always know what your kid's gonna do out there or whatever the case is, but for the most part, everybody's always been respectful and we try to handle those situations just with education instead of always writing a citation. Now, if we stop you once or twice or 3 times, it's probably gonna end up with a citation of some sort. The other thing is after hours jet skiing, right? It's 9:30 in the morning, an hour before sunset. A lot of people like to push it. So we stop them, educate them, and let them know. Besides that, you know, it's number one is just safety. It's, you know, knowing your legal limits for, you know, operating while intoxicated or while drinking. We monitor that a lot. Usually every stop that we make, we're gonna be looking for signs of impairment, stuff like that, if we have to go down that road. I don't think, most of the time, I mean, that's all that we really deal with for the most part. There's always little things here and there, but for the most part, that's what we get on Forest Lake. Thank you. I guess I don't really know unless I have it open up for questions.
So you can stay with us. We're going to have everybody come up and be on a panel for questions. Thank you. Okay, let's give another round of applause for Sergeant Grabowski. Okay, this is the question and answer time, so we've got our guests up here with us, and the others, so raise your hand, and then we'll come around with the microphones and give them to you. Steve and myself will be walking around.
For the water district guys, I'm curious about the water improvement or the water quality improvement project on Highway 97 across from Tim's. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Yes, so that, so through our diagnostic monitoring, which means that we go through this process of actually taking data. We're not just looking at computer models that tell us what projects to work on. So that is actually the part of the on the map. If you look, it's the headwaters of the Sunrise River coming through there. So, but that had some of the highest concentration of phosphorus, even though it wasn't a big volume. And of course, phosphorus then is the contributing factor for algae in the lakes. And that judicial ditch, which is south, that runs all the way south on the other side of Highway 50, that system had the highest both total amount of phosphorus of any drainage area on Forest Lake. So trying to do it one at a time. We did a project just on the south side of Highway 50 the previous year, and then this winter you saw that project there. And so what we did there, we worked with a landowner. We're having an agreement for basically restoring the wetland, because all these ditch systems, you know, Mother Nature didn't have them years ago, right? There was a natural wetland complex. So what we did is to put a small weir structure to kick the water over into that wetland area. So it slows it down, but then also you're going to see a lot of vegetation coming in. That will help both settle the water or settle the things that are coming in there, but also physically capture that before it's coming in. So we go through a cost analysis with the board, and we always do things that have a high return on investment, so that met the threshold, and that's the basis of the project. So that we did get a grant from the state Clean Water Fund for that. That's part of the legacy funds that all of you contribute to through your sales tax. So that was another project that we got funded through that.
Yeah. Okay. I've been on the lake since, my wife and I have been on the lake since 95. And in 23, we had more weeds to contend with than any other time. And what's the explanation for that?
Yeah, I'll give it a whack. We had a perfect storm in about 2023. The lake has gradually been getting better. All the work the Watershed District has been doing has started to improve water quality. On top of that, we had low lake levels. And on top of that, we had zebra mussels filtering out the water to clear up the water, gets better light penetration, and on top of that, we had some warm temperatures. So all those factors combined, unless we get that same suite of variables again, I wouldn't expect quite the same outcome. Does that make any sense?
I guess so.
Yeah. Also, there's a few species. You know, we're getting a number of different types of aquatic plants as well. But there's a few species, especially, that really respond to those types of conditions, including water celery, which is that leafy plant that grows in shallow water, and things like clasping leaf pondweed, which really responded to those conditions. So sometimes it's only a couple of species that are the big headaches.
Hello. I have two questions. One for the watershed. I've seen those signs along some street where it says no dumping or like clippings and leaves. I think that's a nice thing to put it there, but do you know how the enforcement look like? Because you see the sign, and right next to the sign there's like leaves, or every summer when you cut the grass, the clippings go in there. That's the first one. The second one is, does the city or the lake have any plans for salt? What are we doing with all the winter salt going into the lake?
Okay, thanks. I think I'll maybe try to take both of those. So yes, we started that campaign, I guess, on the dumping, no dumping pieces, because so while it's natural to think that here's a ditch, here's something where we can throw our leaves and grass clippings because it's just natural, it decomposes. But even like just even blowing your leaves into the lake, so that's just adding phosphorus. So you're contributing to the water quality problem. And the other is for the city actually has an ordinance of no dumping in the right-of-ways. So they're very much supportive of that effort. They would be the ones that would do, potentially. I can't imagine calling it or asking anybody to come in and give them a citation, but the overall objective is to just bring awareness. So there is, through our partner, the Water Conservation District, we would encourage more composting. If you get a composting bin, then you can use that material yourself for your garden, flower beds, things like that, or else the facility just south of town. Or you can, I think, through your waste management company, so get your green bins and put the material in there. So that's what we are trying to encourage people to do, because the road ditch or a wetland is counter to our work that we're trying to do overall. On the salt side, yes, so it's the Twin Cities is kind of the mecca of using salt around the country. It's creating an increasing problem because the chlorides in the lakes do not go down. There's nothing, we don't have any mechanism for removing chlorides. It'll just get saltier. We don't want the Great Salt Lake right here. It'll totally change the dynamics of the fisheries and a lot of other things. So the city has converted to some various liquid forms. You'll see them go spread to try to reduce. So they're very much trying to reduce that piece of it. It's also then, like other things, trying to manage expectations along with safety on that side of it. We would also like to see a change in one of the laws for liability. Right now, a lot of parking lots, building owners, others use a lot of salt because they're concerned about liability. Obviously, we all understand that part of it. So the tendency is for companies that do the salting over salt because they don't want to have an issue, right? So, but there would be some level of balance. One of the other things long term is to look at areas where could we have porous, meaning like if you've ever seen porous concrete or blacktop or pavers. Actually, Keys Cafe, if you've ever been down there, that parking lot, it's porous pavers, you're never going to see salt there. So they don't need it because when you get a nice warm day at all, it melts and it drains down. There's not going to be any ice sitting on top. So that's another thing, but it's more expensive initially up front, but there are long-term savings. But typically it's the initial cost that people are more concerned about. But so we have started also doing chloride monitoring in all the lakes out of concern about the increasing concentrations.
Well, hold on. I got an open mic, Steve. Can I use this? Yeah, you can go for it, Blake. Hey, thank you, guys. I saw in your that the worst problem was the erosion water milfoil today. I think our biggest problem is the water depth. And we've been talking about this for 6 years now. We need a mechanical dam. The weir has been set in 1923. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's 100 years ago. Do you think we've had erosion? Did we build some channels since then? I think our biggest problem is the water depth. And what are we going to do about it, and where do we start? We need this to happen, guys. Let's get it done.
Well, I think that's why TJ left early, right?
Right.
So,
and now you guys can't answer this. What do we do?
So it's an annual question. So we know that, and so DNR is the only authority from a regulatory standpoint that can adjust that. So this has been their long-standing position, because if you're familiar with other lakes, you'll see variation. So I used to be down at Prior Lake. That Prior Lake has a 10-foot swing in terms of elevation. So much different than what we're dealing with here. So of course here then the biggest thing is the long docks and the shallow shoreline areas, littoral areas. That's kind of what Mother Nature gave you, but you also have them flat shorelines typically for access in a lot of areas versus others. So the Watershed District would be more than fine with working with the DNR and the Lake Association, but it's really moving the needle with the DNR. So we try to collect data. We're trying to, the monitoring information helps inform that point about how long it's been. We know that precipitation rates have changed, and I mean we have no stake one way or the other in terms of the lake level topic or issue. I would say that we would need to have the DNR at the table, and then far. No, it would be the DNR. So. Sure. Well, I think that would be the piece. I mean, you're gonna have to get the state agency at the table, and the Corps would be a good one too, because they probably would have at some point a say in the overall discussion, I suppose. But at this point, DNR is the sole authority about all lake level adjustments. And
call the DNR and you ask to talk to the hydrologist. That'll give you a good place to start. And I know I've talked to him a couple of times.
Yep.
If you want to be on the committee with us, let's do it. Come talk to me like the committee, Dawn. He'll let you know what the next steps are. But that's your first step, is get a hold of him. All right,
So I'm gonna jump in here. Blake, I hear you. This is a conversation that's been going on for a long time, and I think what we can do, as a new president, I think what we can do as the Lake Association is take this on, let's make it a board agenda item, and let's come up with next steps, and let's report back to everybody else. This is a conversation I know that has gone on forever, and I know how it impacts everybody in the lake, and oftentimes we've visited this thing over and over and over, only to be told that the DNR won't work with us. But let's try to take it on again. We'll communicate with you as an association, and let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you. Let's roll up our sleeves. We'll dive into this. Let's see where it goes. No promises, but all we can do is try, right? It's a conversation for the ages.
Okay.
2x6 across the dam.
I understand what the fix is.
Yeah.
We've talked about that for years.
Yeah.
If anybody's bold enough,
I've got I have a question.
Appreciate it. I know there's a lot of passion behind this. We hear you. Let's move on to some other questions.
Yeah,
here.
I've got a question here. It kind of fits into what we've just been talking about, but is there a regulation on how long a dock can be out on the lake?
I have a very long dock at my property.
What do you call long? Because mine was 164 feet long. So
mine's multiples times the length of that one.
Okay, well.
So I live on the very shallow section, and it has to be, the DNR says you can have a dock long enough that it's navigable for your watercraft at the end of your dock. So however far out you got to go to get to navigable water is within the regulation. Anybody else like to comment on that?
I think also that the riparian area for the lake, any lake, is 150 feet. which means that the shoreline owner has responsibility for that first 150 feet. And there's all kinds of regulations on what you could cut, how much weed you could cut, how much you could clear for a beach, et cetera. And I think the dock probably has to be less than 150 feet is what I'm guessing, but I could be wrong on that. So why don't we?
Mine is way over that.
So why don't we get an answer to that, and we'll publish it on our website, so you can check on the website and see what that is. So somebody want to make some notes for that?
Any more questions over here? Oh,
I've got a question here. It has to do with the watershed district. So over the years, you know, water quality's been an issue, and I know that a lot of attention has been given to reducing the phosphorus in the lake to get us to a certain point. And I don't think enough emphasis or discussion has taken place around reaching kind of the capstone, that pivotal moment, of which you could do what you did last year, which was the alum treatment on the lake to reduce the phosphorus and the turnover. What can we expect, and what can everybody expect as, you know, lake homeowners when they're on the lake from a water clarity perspective, here being that was done last fall, going into the spring and the summer this year? And I would also say, because you only treated the second lake, how does that impact, I think, first lake, and how does that impact third lake?
Okay. Yeah, good question. I guess this is me again. So, so for the treatment side, so Forest Lake is complex from 3 basins. So we have to really, we evaluate it almost like 3 separate lakes. The predominant wind is from the northwest, of course, so we're seeing water and other things, including invasive species, movement to the east. But the flow of water is from the east basin to the west. So there's this complexity from the mixing standpoint, and how much of it, and of course each depth, we refer to residence time, like how much water stays in each basin for so long. So right now we would expect, even though last year was clear based off of the low precipitation levels, that the water level would be even clearer. So one of the goals, just historically from the community that we'd heard, people said, well, we want to be able to see our toes, chest deep water. So because before, for some of those that were around, at least the data and other things were showing that the water clarity was extremely poor, very turbid water for many, many years. The other side of that, though, is with the clarity, you are seeing more aquatic plants. Many of them are, starting to come back. One of the things that's also missing that we can see from anybody involved with the Historical Society here by chance, is the old photography that shows all the emergent vegetation in the nearshore areas. And that's, I was talking to some of the board Lake Association members here not too long ago. There used to be a property on the south side of First Lake that had never been built on. The oak trees were, almost 3 feet round. There'd never been anything, and there was a lot of emergent vegetation about 25 feet out. And you could see on both sides, because I had been called out to look at the neighboring property, there had never been any ice heaves, because that emergent vegetation, we've all seen this as kids and adults, when the sun comes out in the wintertime, something like that, any vegetation will melt around that, and you'll see it go down into the snow or the ice or things like that. So that thermal attraction of that vegetation softens the ice and doesn't allow that ice heaving to occur, that ice jacking. So one of the things that we want to also try to promote is ways to, at least in the areas along the property lines, is try to create more of that ability for that emergent vegetation. And emergent means coming out of the water. So there's plenty of plants in the water, of course. We're seeing all that. But they're the ones that are, maybe we have some bulrush, but there were some others that we would see historically as well. So we would expect the water quality to be very clean this year from that standpoint. Even with when we're coming out of an El Nino and into an El Niño quite strongly. So all the historical records would suggest that we're going to have a wetter summer, maybe a little bit cooler, but we won't know until we get into that. But right now, that's probably, given the cycles, that's probably what we would see. So.
I was wondering, what is the city represented here, and what is their commitment to Forest Lake? What's their percentage of funding for all this, and is that going to be changing in the future?
Well, the city's not here, but that might be something for the Lake Association to consider in the future. But they've been a great partner. So there was a Lake Association that worked with the city to help them understand how much additional property taxes were generated by the shoreline property itself, notwithstanding just the home, but the shoreline value. So the city, I think, is somewhere $65 or some $1,000 a year presently. And so we work with Public Works a lot as well, and a lot of different collaborative projects. Certainly on the street sweeping project, we did Forest Lake. We did that study with the University of Minnesota to capture. We took samples out of different routes. We did that for 2 years, continuously from spring to fall, to show, and now that's being showcased around the state of Minnesota as really just one of the most cost-effective things that communities can do to improve water quality in no matter where it is. So we're working with other, sharing that information and data, not only around the lower St. Croix, but elsewhere. But I mean, right now, the city continues to be a really good partner on all the things that we work on. So they're part of that shared agreement that was discussed at the beginning. So on all their lake management activities.
Any more questions? There's one there. There's more. Yep.
We've been in Forest Lake for about 15 years on the lake and paying our dues, and we're on the South Bay, which is kind of like the half-brother of Lake 1, 2, and 3. But the city is going to be redoing Belts Park next to St. Peter's Church, and the water from about half of it from the St. Peter's parking lot and all of Belts Park goes into a drain which goes into the channel in the South Bay. And I'm wondering if there's anything that can be done to, while the city is redoing that park, to improve that water flow.
Yeah, so that's it's been a project that we've recently been in conversation with them about. So two things: when St. Peter's redid their parking lot, actually a lot of the water has been rerouted back into Rice Creek, so it goes into a wetland complex on the other end, on the other side. Well, some of it comes over, but then the way the piping is set, it's maybe it's a little more complex. But yes, there's some of it still comes over. The stuff off the street, so it's intended to be a two-stage project where they're going to capture the majority of that water coming out of that and treat it in that park area. So we're still looking at what that would look like, but right now that's the basic plan is for them to have it on a two-stage approach. So, parks are great places to do public infrastructure for water quality improvements.
I have a question on Bull Rush. I'm unfamiliar with it, and that was our picture with we embraced the natural shoreline and so on. But last year, for the first year, we have some Bull Rush started. I noticed it, and I think a week later I went out, and it's very prolific, evidently. Now, is that something we like, we want? How far is it going to go into my neighbor's yard or beach that they're not probably going to love it?
Yeah, great question. I can take that. Steve may want to jump in here as well. And so the fluctuate, generally if it's a bulrush, it's going to be a native species, and that's one of those species that you want preferable to cattails. So that's the type of emergent vegetation that really does provide that good bank stabilization, prevents ice heaves, prevents erosion, and it does benefit from fluctuating water levels. And so because we saw those lower water levels, we did see some emergent vegetation that we hadn't seen before. And what that is those are those plants that there's a seed bank that will survive for years, and when you get the right water levels, you'll get some new stuff growing there that you haven't seen before. Green bulrush, if that's the one it is, there are some other types as well. But it does tend to, it will kind of spread, but it's very easily restricted by water levels. And we don't encourage you to cut it, clear your channel so you can access the lake and be able to enjoy it. But, I wouldn't recommend cutting it or anything. And if it does start encroaching up, into your property, which would be only common in a really wet year, simply mowing it would be more than sufficient. But overall, it's a pretty good plant to have. Yeah, it's pretty tough to mow for sure. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it. And Yep, so that emergent vegetation, like I said, it's super important for holding that shoreline together. And so that would be a good opportunity to have a conversation with a neighbor potentially about the benefits of a natural shoreline. Yeah. Otherwise, worst case scenario, you can contact the DNR for some permits to do some removal. We really wouldn't recommend that unless it's causing a really distinct problem. It's pretty limited by how far out it'll go. Depends a lot on the grade of your shoreline. Unless you've got a really, really shallow shoreline, it's not going to extend very far out. Yeah, but great question.
Yeah, we're really new to the lake, but back to the water level, I see how it goes down, and we've been in a drought. But we've heard about people using the lake to irrigate their yards, and I'm wondering how widespread that is. I'm curious if it would have some effect on the water level.
I'll probably turn this over to Mike, but I'd say from my experiences, it's very common. At scale, it's certainly going to have some impact. I'm not sure how great that impact is going to be just in relation to the evaporation coming off the lake.
Right, so DNR allows that, so it's not anything you have to get a permit for. And so that's, well, two things. One is to understand how much lawn. So I was an agronomist for 20 years. I see turf as just another crop, so it's important to think of it in that regard. And so one of the most common issue with lawns is low pH, and your lawn service probably isn't testing for it. So, so if you have, especially if you have Creeping Charlie, you guarantee you have low pH. I don't even need to come and test for it. So you just go to Fleet Farm, go get some bags of lime, and spread it yourself if you want, or get somebody else to do it. That'll help. So, so we offer free soil testing for that purpose. To help educate in terms of some of that thing. The other is having a good organic matter level, depending on who did the construction for the home. A lot of times they just put not really ideal soil back, and if it's less than 5% organic matter, you are an uphill battle in terms of good turf quality overall. So then you're just forced to water it more. So a good healthy substrate for turf growth, you would only need to really water it once a week, even during dry periods. So maybe surprising, but that's really I've done so much of that work. I've just seen it very, very consistently. I'd say in urban areas, I wouldn't be surprised that 90% of the lawns are low in pH. So that's one thing just from a starting point. And again, we can help just take a soil test and get it to the lab and give you the results and start with some of that. So, but you can water from the lake. That's not a problem. And from the standpoint of how valuable our groundwater is, it may be preferred. And it's not a huge impact. Where you do get permitting is if you're using it for something much larger volumes. Typically, lawns are very small volumes, even aggregated across the entire lake area. But it would be even less water if you had a good, doing good turf management from that standpoint. So.
Okay, can you hear me, everybody? Can you hear me? I don't want to say this again. Okay, first off, I'd like to give these guys a shout out because they got a very difficult job. then I'd like to say that this idea of having a barrier between the lake and your lawn is the most absolute possible thing you can do if you want your lake clear. Phosphorus comes from fertilizing your lawn. Think about it. You drive around the lake and everybody's lawn just looks awesome. 20 feet of plants and vegetation, is that such a big thing to risk? So your lake looks beautiful? Think about that. Second thing, there's animals out there, and Einstein said, when the bees are gone, man will follow 5 years later. Anybody heard that before? Okay. And this guy that's a cop, stand up. You kick ass, pal. What a job he has. He's out there driving around on a boat, and we're all out there drinking and stuff, and you guys are giving, think about it. Not me, but people I know. Okay, so then I got said you had these DNR boats that are floating around at night, and they're checking the thing, and you don't want to think they're UFOs. Well, I got 3 dogs. They think to me. You guys, I mean, God, I look outside and there's these super bright lights. Black Sabbath is playing on a DVD. I'm going, what the hell is this? I'm serious. These super bright lights are shining in the lake. Is that the DNR or is that something else? The only thing I'm missing is, some sitar music in the background. So is that what you got? Is that you guys with those super bright lights?
That's carp fishing. People have said that.
They're
bow fishing for carp.
So our lakes have great walleyes. They got great. What's the other fish you said? So if somebody's cutting me off here.
I don't know if I can follow that guy up, but I got a pretty basic question. My question was in regards to when they spray or treat the Eurasian milfoil or any of the invasive species on the lake around the shoreline. What is the earliest time that they plan on doing that? Like, do they have a date set that they're going to do that, or do they not know that yet? And the basis behind my question is, so my wife and I are new on the lake, so we haven't been through a whole entire summer. The only reason I asked that is because on other lakes, especially like Minnetonka, they're spraying like late May, early June when fish are in shell spawning and reproducing, and they're just bombing them fish and killing everything. Like, does that happen here, or do we wait a little while to at least let everything reproduce? And
yeah, that's a great question. The first spraying that will occur might be next week or so. There'll only be 15 acres for that curly-leaf pondweed. That is a contact herbicide that degrades very quickly, and because native plants aren't up yet, it won't affect the native plants. And fish, which are somewhat sensitive to dicot, they will actually move, but because we're treating a small area, it shouldn't affect fish or the other creatures in the lake. Later in the summer, there might be some spraying done for Eurasian milfoil, but so far, because we've kept it under control, very small acres as well. But what we don't have any control over are individual residents can certainly contract to have spraying done on their property, and they will contract individually with the herbicide applicators, but they're limited to about 2,500 square feet, and that spraying generally doesn't occur to about June or even into July. So in a 2,500 square foot area, relatively small compared to the whole volume of the lake, but certainly there can be some small impacts right in front of your place. So you have that, but that's up to the individual homeowner whether they want to spray or not in front of their place.
Okay, we have one last thing here, and that's Councilman Erickson would like to say a couple words to us here. Go ahead.
Just real quick, thank you so much for being here tonight. I know a number of people have left already, but if there are any questions about the city's role in the tri-partner partnership, please come back and see us. Myself is here as well as Councilmember Roberts. We'd be happy to have that conversation. We're so proud to partner with the Lake Association, the Watershed District. We've been able to accomplish some major projects, including the expansion of the downtown dock. And I just want to make sure that people understand that it wasn't just the Watershed District or the Lake Association or the city, but I got to say that Twin Cities Docks made a major investment in helping that be accomplished. And so just know that I really appreciate Mr. Dahlbeck and the work of his company, because he was a major partner in that effort. But you know, there's a lot of great questions that came out tonight around the city. So please come back. Feel free to reach out to Mr. Roberts or I. We'd be happy to have those conversations, and so appreciate you guys being here tonight.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to thank everybody for coming this evening. It made it a very lively event. And also, your package you've got, there's a membership form in there. Remember, this is all about getting more members. Hand that to your neighbors. Thanks very much. Have a great night. Safe travels home. Thank you.